Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the seminar today. Welcome to the risk assessment panel discussion. I'm Janet Wong. Today we have Christian, Jason, Fred, and Iftikhar here as our panelists. Thank you very much for joining me on the stage today. So without further ado, let's begin the risk assessment panel discussion. Okay, Jason, the first question goes to you. What are the key lessons learned from the global events that supply chain can apply to better prepare for the future crises?
Thanks, Janet. Is this working? Thank you, Janet. So Christian touched on a bit of this stuff in his presentation to us, but it's really important that we focus on different scenarios. We don't just get stuck on one scenario. What I've found in our business recently, we were the victims of a cyber attack. Then there became a big focus on just the cyber attack. But what we've done now, moving forward, is we are looking at training and scenarios in all of the different areas that Christian spoke about in his speech. And preparing and planning and training our people in those scenarios is of utmost importance. We need to have a strategy in place so that that training is conducted regularly, and also the training needs to be relevant to our business.
Okay, in the meantime, can we have the questions for the audience up on the slides, please? Okay, the questions to the audience. What changes are essential for supply chain to better prepare for the future crisis? I believe there are 4 options available for the audience to pick. Okay, Fred, questions to you. While the audience are answering the questions, would you like to share on how can we better prepare ourselves for the future crisis?
Hello, everyone. I think we just experienced some of COVID-19. This is a global issue, right? So compared with previously, this is global disaster for everybody, the company. So I have some number for everybody. We can see that the transportation cost are increasing, right? Before the COVID, they were increasing to 2.4 times, right? And so some of the special lane, we have China to the west coast of the USA, even increase up to 10 times. So this is significantly the cost increase. So I think secondly, from BSI, we have some safety number. Safety from container or trailer is up to, 2020 will be 8, then 21 will be 11. 22 will be 12.8, and safety from facility will be 24, 25, 26. Year by year is increased in the past 3 years of the COVID. So some of the takeaway, so I can say, I'm working for Dow, so we're trying to explore option for multi-resources, right? To find a different supplier in different region to better support our supply chain security program globally. So trying to invest some of the supply chain technology to help our supply chain operation sustainably to help better support our customer request, right? And I think the third one should be trying to enable some of the manufacturing supplier, right? But APGC, we have a lot of suppliers in here, but because of cost or material, this we have more here. But I think the COVID-19 gave us a new session, so try to have some, your supplier in a different region. This is a good response and to support the business. I think this is good.
Thank you, Fred. How about you, Christian?
Yeah, thank you, Janet. So I think one of the issues I would pick up is that most professional organizations actually probably know their supply chains pretty well under normal circumstances. But what about how much they understand how things change during a shock? Are we really aware of all the sort of vulnerabilities to these surprising connected and cascading effects that I talked about? So when there's an event that sort of seems very local, but then actually kind of reverberates just throughout the supply chain, how prepared are we really towards those? And here I would actually sort of just follow Jason in terms of saying that we should be more brave in terms of actually exposing ourselves to different type of disruptive scenarios that stress test our preparedness against such surprising shocks, so that we don't just assume that we are going to be okay when something happens because we're so good and under normal circumstances, but making sure that we can also be that during surprising shocks.
Thank you, Christian. Okay, the questions for the audience is up. Please use your device, scan the QR code over there and answer these questions on what were the key lessons learned from the recent global events. Thank you. And while that's ongoing with the audience, Iftikhar, would you like to add on anything?
Yeah, I think most of the areas already been covered by my colleagues. I just wanted to add a few things that this recent event have actually given us a lot of lessons. In my opinion, I think there is a question up there from the audience about talking about the diversification. I think, in my opinion, we were lacking in the diversification in our suppliers. We were focused on one supplier base or two supplier base, rather than thinking about that we should have more suppliers, that if something happens, something disrupted, we should be ready for that. And the second thing is that we didn't actually consider a multi-sourcing model. Multi-sourcing model it's not new. It's been there for a long time, but we didn't actually consider in organizations on a day-to-day basis. We just thought about corporates actually only consider those multi-sourcing models and all those sort of stuff. Small organization can do that too. It's a very important factor. We need to consider that. I think there are things that you need to understand now. Technology can help lots of organizations to understand how to change in their process models and improve their supply base and be prepared for the future crisis. Risk assessment, again, it's a very important part. It's a very important role to play in crisis management. In my opinion, technology and digitalization is the key. That's the part.
Thank you, Iftikhar. So, Christian, having understood how we can apply to be better prepared for the future crisis, what are some of the potential long-term changes and adaptations that the supply chain needs, and how is the supply chain going to adapt to that?
Yeah, I would kind of go back to that issue that I talked about during my presentation, the geoeconomic competition, and how that's sort of forcing governments and regional organizations, international organizations and alliances actually to focus on more, gaining more control over critical supply chains, whether we're talking about critical supply chains for essential goods or services, or data or technology. And what's that really going to mean is that we're going to be seeing some splintering of supply chains as countries, nation states, for instance, go in and diversify the critical supply chains. Do we know what effects that will have? No, we don't. So the governments are sort of reacting to these changing strategic circumstances where they feel that there's increased threat and increased risk in the strategic environment, and try their best to sort of secure, of course, the well-being of their populations through these activities. But do they know how those measures are actually going to affect global supply chains that are being built on efficiency? And as part of this, I think what we're going to be seeing as well is that, and I know this is unpopular, but just-in-time has been very good for profitability and efficiency of supply chains, but we are probably going to be pushed much more towards just-in-case. I know stockpiling is expensive, having extra inventories and so forth are expensive, but so are the impacts of these shocks. And this is something that governments are increasingly actually emphasizing. So what the impacts of this will be, I don't think we know yet, really. And that is, I think, the most important factor here. We should try to figure that out.
Thank you, Christians. Can we have the next questions up for the audience? In addition to what Christian mentioned, Jason, do you have anything to add on?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate what Christian said. From an Australian perspective, our government has just introduced the Security of Critical Infrastructure Act, which does dictate what we need to do in these terms. But again, touching on the need to have an end-to-end process, a strategy around crisis management, which includes starting with your risk assessments, knowing who your critical suppliers are, and then training and preparing your people for events that may happen.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, the polls figures are coming in. So based on the audience response, majority voted that improving risk management and contingency planning are some of the key lessons learned from the recent global event. Thank you very much for that. Next question, please. Okay, all right, we have heard from the panelists about being better prepared for the next crisis. So questions to all, in no more than 2 minutes, can you share with the audience on how do we get prepared and leverage off predictive modeling and scenario planning to anticipate and mitigate the impact of this global event? Fred, would you like to go first?
Sure. I think Christine just shared about the supply chain, the risk, right? So we talk about, some of the political, geographical, and some of the supply chain disruption, and cyber risk, and IP, and natural disaster, and weather economy. So those are of the, the impact to global supply chain, sorry. So how to, take some action for this kind of risk or impact to supply chain. So we said that we needed to develop, our program, which is some company may call it BCP of the program. So something we say we needed to close monitor the risk and opportunity with a new technology, right? So we are using AI or IoT technology to tracking our cargo from end-to-end transportation, right? This will be good to tracking the cargo on ETA, ETD, and to reduce the the risk or the cycle time to better support of the supply chain. I think secondly, it's good to invest some of the global partner, which is they have good capability to support the business, right? So during the COVID, we're using the charter flight, right, to better deliver and secure our cargo and to the customer. So I think technology, some of the action, this is some of the critical or element to, for overall supply chain.
Thank you, Fred. How about you, Christian?
Yeah, I mean, is this on? Yeah. So I think increasing visibility and transparency throughout the supply chains is extremely important, because that way we can early on tell when something exceptional is happening and start sort of reacting to that. But and for that, sort of big data, artificial intelligence, all that is very important, can be very helpful. But one of the things I think we need to really get better at is really making sense of all that. So data is just data until you can actually put some intellectual effort on it and turn it into information that you can use in terms of understanding what your vulnerabilities are, what the changes are, and what the potential impacts from those changes are in relation to your vulnerabilities. So there's a lot of that sort of sense-making, I think, business that we need to do. Scenario planning is something I've done quite a bit. Is actually a really good tool for that. So in terms of imagining what the potential futures are, can help us to sort of become more proactive as well. So as opposed to being just reacting to things, we're much better off if we can, as early as possible, start preparing for these changes that are otherwise going to be surprising and are going to become a shock. So the early intervention can actually save us from some trouble. When we are taken by surprise, at least we have pre-thought some avenues in terms of how we can react to different types of scenarios. And again, those sort of disruptive scenarios and stress testing, start doing that, because that's coming. So I mentioned the European Union economic security strategy, but as in Australia and actually a lot of places around the world, Europe also has a new directive that came into force this January called the Critical Entities Resilience Directive, which kind of pushes resilience responsibility to entities. The entities are the operators, the organizations that produce these essential goods and services and operate the supply chains of those essential goods. So it is being sort of pushed to the operators, and European Union has already started doing stress testing on strategic goods such as energy, but they will follow it through to other areas, and that will sort of little by little reverberate throughout the supply chain. So even if it's European action we're talking about, you're going to see it here too.
Thank you, Christians. Okay, based on our previous questions, based on the voting that we got, majority voted that enhanced risk management and contingency planning measures are some of the changes that are essential for supply chain to better prepare for the future crisis. Interesting answers from the audience. Can we have the next questions up for the audience, please? Thank you. Okay, while it is ongoing with the audience, Jason and Iftikhar, do you have anything to add on with regards to leveraging of predictive modeling and scenario planning?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, and I'll split this question into two parts. Well, the first one is prediction, predictive modeling and prediction. The second part is planning and scenario planning, and to anticipate how we can make sure that we're not impacted. So prediction or planning, I'll come back to the real life again. You guys watch news every day. In the end of the news, you see the weather lady comes and tells you what's happened tomorrow and what's going to happen day after, what's going to happen in the week, and so and so. And they also relates those days weather forecast based on the year backs. They actually tells you what happened last year at the same day, what happened last week on the same day, and so on and so forth. So how can they do that? It's only because they have a data. They have a data available in their hand, and they restore, they keep the data, they preserve the data, and they actually use that data to do the prediction and predictive modeling so that they can predict tomorrow what's going to happen. So again, we come back to the same thing, technology. If you don't have a technology, we're not going to do it. Now I'm going to relate this to two major, so far in our generational life, two major global events. One is happened in influenza pandemic in 1918 and 1990. And the second one is, this recent one is COVID-19 one. Why we were not prepared for the COVID one? Because the 1991, we didn't have the technology. We didn't have enough support and things that to preserve the data at that time. And that's why there was a generational gap between that last event, this event, and we were not prepared for this one. And we had a lot of issue in this one. Most of the countries, most of the poor countries and undeveloped countries have lots of issue because there were not enough information for them. So predictive modeling, it's a heavily focused on data-driven forecasting. So that's my opinion. Definitely a collaboration, information sharing, continuous improvement. All of these are add-ons to that. So, but the data is the most important and technology is the part of it.
Well answered, Iftikhar. Anything for you, Jason?
Yeah, look, I agree with what Iftikhar says there about the data. It's important that we do get that data and utilise it. And as far as scenario planning goes, some of the technology that's out there around that we can utilise for our scenarios around crisis management, like digital twinning of our facilities, that can really help our operators to learn about how to manage these crises.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, based on our audience response, majority voted that simulating crisis scenarios and developing proactive strategies is the way to go in predictive modeling and scenario planning to prepare for future global events. Thank you very much. Next questions for the audience. Thank you. Okay, so a question for Fred. In terms of predictive modeling, how would you use that to effectively communicate and collaborate with various stakeholders during the time of the global crisis?
Yeah, I think effective communication is a key. The critical is not only company, but it's also to your life, to be more frankly, right? So some of the tips I think everybody know. So I would say encourage transparency, right? And to build the trust relationship, particularly you're working with your supplier, your customer, so the trust, is a must. I think the survey should be willing to think of the question from customer perspective, right? Make sure you always think of the same issue with your customers and to support your customers. So I think another one is collaboration. Collaboration is alive. So collaboration across, different partner, different supplier, different organization. I think the last one should be always be proactive. Now it's not reactive. So be patient and ready to support the business. That's it.
Thank you, Fred. Iftikhar, anything to add on from there?
Yeah, it's networking. It's an important aspect of our supply chain. It's two-way. It has to be two-way. It's not one way. So if you don't hear something, you're not going to be able to resolve the issue. So you have to say something and then you have to hear something. So both ways, it's an important aspect. So networking, in my opinion, it's a very, very key of any suppliers and other stakeholders. It's an important aspect. The other part is basically, again, I'm going to go back to the risk assessment. It's a main topic of ours, basically, risk assessment. I think you might not aware of that term that's called joint risk assessment. Joint risk assessment, as TAPA is now trying to do, to actually connect the two ends and creating a loop. Now, the reason I'm trying to explain this is that why TAPA risk assessment is important than the other risk assessment standards. Because TAPA is actually creating a loop between two ends, one customers and one suppliers, and in middle there is a logistics involved, there is other aspects involved. That's basically, we're missing that part in risk assessment. We do risk assessment individually. So my organization, your organization, but in the middle where is the logistics comes in, where the supply chain comes in, we don't consider as a joint risk assessment. So the new term coming into the market, coming into the businesses, coming into the organizations called joint risk assessments. That is going to play a very, very important and crucial role in future, making it sure that we're prepared for a future crisis, future events, future aspects. Another aspect is basically a feedback system. Now, in a normal life, normal businesses, normal day-to-day business, we only collect feature from the upward, from the customers. We don't collect feature from the feedback from the backward, which is suppliers. We don't ask them a question how we do for them, how we are good for them, basically. We don't ask this question to our suppliers. So we should have a system, feedback system for both ends. And if that is the system that we can develop, we can create a better world, a better future for ourselves and for our organization.
Thank you, Iftikhar. Okay, the questions for the audience: supply chain collaborate to create a robust network during global crises, and the majority voted that coordinating efforts with other stakeholders is the way to go. So Iftikhar, just to conclude today's risk assessment panel discussion, if I take all of what that has been shared today, what do you think of this, and what are some of the ways to create a more robust network for supply chain during such crises?
Understanding, again, it's a good question, and it is an important one as well. Understanding needs and expectation. Understanding, sharing a data, developing joint contingency plans, developing joint crisis management plans, be connected with not just customers and suppliers. You know the best source to collect information at the moment? Who is more connected to the world? I have a ABC organization in Singapore or Malaysia or Australia. I am only aware of the local issues. What better connection is that you go and connect with your governments and industry bodies and association. That helps you understand, because they're connected to the world. They're connected to the foreign embassies. They're connected to the different governments, and they have more readily available information for you guys to actually have prepared yourself for the future. So the better networking creates a robust environment and and recover from ourselves from the global crisis. That's my opinion, that we should do not just one, it's a tri-party connection. So customers, suppliers, government, industry bodies, it has to be connected.
Thank you, Iftikhar. Okay, we have some questions from the audience. It's open to the panelists. So one of the audience asked, does the panel agree that without digitalization, it will be impossible to have a resilient supply chain? Anybody want to answer that?
I think digitalisation is imperative. We do need it, and we need to move towards it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's important, as I said in my couple of answers before, that if you don't have technology and platforms, you won't be able to capture the information, and digitalization is one of the key aspects. How can you connect with your suppliers just emailing them? I think if you create a formal platforms and give them that platform readily available on a live scenarios, they can add information in there. So digitalization is the most important need at the moment.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Iftikhar. How about Christian and Fred? Anything would you like to add on?
No, just I think, again, because it's, I'm just sort of following up my colleagues here, that it's such complex global network, so what other options do you really have in terms of managing it effectively than increasing digitalization? But again, like I said, I think in my speech, I think we still need to be also aware of the risks. So whatever brings great benefits, unfortunately, can also bring great risks. That is the balance of the force, if you allow this sort of Star Wars analogy here.
Thank you, Christians. Okay, I think due to time constraint, because we still have a few questions from the audience, we will take that offline, answer these questions in the article, and it will be out in the next TAPA newsletter. But thank you so much, my panelists. Thank you to the audience for the participations. With that, we'll come to an end of the risk assessment panel discussion. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.